Hello again from my front porch. See, right here, at my front porch. I was in Houston, Texas earlier this week, and I'd meant to do one of these from Houston. I really wanted to, but I wanted to do it with something in the background that was very, Houston-y. Unfortunately, it rained a lot of the time that I was down there, which didn't really help that situation. There was one point where I was on one of our construction jobs out there, up on the 24th floor of what's going to be a 36-story building, and because it's under construction, it's all wide open. It's just bare concrete level, just exposed, and, complete 360 panoramic view of everything from the 24th floor, and that was a little bit unnerving, a little scary, but also it was kind of cool too. And I thought this would be a great place to do a front porch from, but I didn't, because a lot of general contractors and some construction projects, some customers don't really like to have photos and video taken on their job site, from within and then posted on social media. It's one thing if you're taking pictures for internal use for safety or improvement or whatever, but to do video that would be posted publicly, that's a whole nother ball of wax. So I didn't want to get in trouble. I didn't want to get anybody else in trouble, so I didn't do that. But it is a cool idea, and so I'm gonna have to try to arrange that sometime. I'm gonna have to coordinate that. On one of my visits to one of these cities, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna go up high in one of those buildings, and I'm gonna do a front porch from way up there, and have you get a feel for that, experience of that, because it is cool. But anyway, I babble a lot. What I really want to talk to you today about is something that my good friend Pat King will really love: goats. Specifically mountain goats, because there's that analogy that you always hear about the two mountain goats meet each other on a path. The path that's really narrow on the side of a mountain, and it's only wide enough for one to go. And two billy goats meet each other on the path, and what do? Well, they might initially challenge each other, butt horns, and try to challenge it. But eventually, one of them is going to cede, and they're going to lay down and let the other one walk across them, and then get up, and they both go their merry way. Now, we all have heard that story. We're all aware of that story. But how many of us are willing to be the billy goat that lays down? That's my challenge. And the reason I had this in mind is because in my travels now, I've had a chance to see drivers in a lot of different cities. I've had a chance to see fellow passengers on lots of different flights, and just individuals in different contexts that illustrate to me that, there's the other cliche is, man, if you can drive here, wherever here is, if you can drive here, you can drive anywhere, because the drivers here are the worst. Well, what I've discovered is the drivers are the same everywhere. Now, granted, the larger the city, the more population you have, and so statistically speaking, the more worst drivers you're going to have, and if you have a really bad day, you might encounter a lot of them. But still, I don't think that any city can lay a claim to we have the worst drivers here or there. What it really comes down to is that mindset. How self-centered and self-focused are you? How much are you the billy goat who will refuse to lay down? And let me give you an example that just happened today here back in Des Moines, when I went and had lunch with a former Waldinger colleague of mine, and on my way back, I was driving on the street, and I was going into the turning lane so that I could go that way, and this car with these two little ladies was coming the other way with a turn signal on. They wanted to cross and go that way to a little shopping plaza, and so I stopped in the turning lane. I got into it, but I stopped, and I reached my hand out the window and, go ahead, go across. And they started to go, but then they stopped, because coming up behind me was this little hot dogger in a little black boxy car that came blasting around me so that he could get into the turning lane. Now, I happened to notice him, that he was a young fellow. He was vaping, and he's like a stereotype of a certain description of a younger generation individual. But one thing he definitely was oblivious, because the old ladies then passed in front of me. They waved thank you as they drove by, and I waved back, you're welcome. And then I pulled on up and was stopped right behind young guy in his little black car. And I noticed him look in his rearview mirror and see me, and he was really confused as to why I was behind him. Now maybe he thought I was turning into a yard or something earlier on, but clearly he did a little double take in the mirror, and I could see his eyebrows kind of, because he's wearing the reflective sunglasses, so I couldn't see his eyes, but the eyebrows I saw, and the head kind of like this, and then he and then as the light changed and we went on, I drove behind him. We were going the same route. I was right behind him most of the way, so it's not like he gained anything. But here's the deal. I don't think he's a bad person, but he definitely was not paying attention. He definitely did not see the situation to understand that, oh, this person is letting these people cross. I'll pull in behind them, and then we go on. No. That individual was so focused on his timeline, his agenda. Well, I am here to get in the turning lane, and you're way back here, so I'm going to go around you and go on up. Okay, innocent enough, no big deal. On the way to lunch, I also had noticed I pulled up to a four-way stop, and 3 cars had stopped at the same time, and I was behind one of them, so I wasn't one of the 3 actually at the intersection. And we sat there for what felt like a rather long period of time as they tried to figure out who was supposed to go. And I saw different ones of the cars start to go, start, stop, and then finally 2 of them went about at the same time, and they're like pausing, letting one go, and it was so messy because none of them were willing to be the goat to lay down. None of them were willing to say, reach out the window and motion to somebody else, go, hey, you go ahead, just go ahead. Now, had it been me, I would have tried to motion for the 2 cars that were facing each other, because 3 of them at an intersection. I would have tried to motion for the 2 cars facing each other to go ahead and go, because efficiency, we get 2 of you out of the way. We take care of stuff. But still, none of them had that mindset. They all were focused on, I need to get going. You're supposed to wait for me. Because they're all jockeying about that. But it's not just driving. On airplanes, now, one of the things that I often question is why airplanes don't load from the window seat to the aisle seats, or from the back of the plane to the front. Now, I understand first class, you let them on first because, first class and all that stuff. But the rest of the plane, why don't load that way? Because it always seems like there's all this congestion. And then people climbing over each other and trying to got to climb out so this person can climb over you and all this kind of stuff. So I never understood why that's the case. And the other thing that has always frustrated me is you have a connecting flight and you get stuck, towards the back of the plane, and then you're panicked trying to get out of the plane, but you got all these other people just taking their time getting out in front of you, and you're like, come on, people, move on. There have been a couple of flights I've been on where the airline flight attendant people actually made announcements as we're pulling to the gate that if you do not have an urgent connecting flight to get to, could you please remain seated so that those who do have urgent connecting flights can get out? And I'm like, fine by me. I just sit there a little bit longer and mess around on Facebook and stir up trouble. but as on one of these flights where this happened, there was I heard come up the aisle behind where I was sitting. I heard somebody trying to get around people saying, excuse me, my connecting flight's in 50 minutes. Excuse me, my connecting flight's in 50 minutes. And then he got up behind a guy who was relatively close. And he said, and he did it, excuse me, can I get around you? My connecting flight 50 minutes. And this guy doesn't even turn and look at him, just sternly says, we're all trying to get somewhere, buddy. It's like, ooh, somebody's in a foul mood. I suspect constantly. But the way he said it didn't imply that he had the same sense of urgency. What his tone and his body language and the fact that he wouldn't even acknowledge the guy behind him. I'm not getting out of your way, buddy. What that said to me, and maybe I'm wrong, I will confess, I have no intimate personal knowledge of the situation, but it sure looked like what he was giving off was, I don't care if you're in a hurry. That's not my concern. I want off this flight. I am also trying to get somewhere. Therefore, you can just wait behind me, pal. It's good enough. That's the way it looked to me. And I just thought, wow, that really sucks. Because honestly, would it really have hurt for that guy to say, oh, okay, yeah, sure, go around me. Yeah. I mean, one person going around you, would it really hurt? It'd probably be just like the guy that I got behind in the turning lane, and then I'm right behind him most of the route, heading back home, because he didn't gain any significant ground that way. Well, if the guy in the plane would have let the other guy around him, he might have still been leapfrogging and made it up to the front and been in a much better situation to get to his connecting flight. But would that have really slowed down Mr. Grumpy? No. It would have made negligible difference at all. So, we know that he's not the billy goat's going to lay down. And I want to be clear. I'm not advocating being a pushover and letting people literally walk all over you all the time. That's not at all, because that's the pendulum can swing too far that way. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm encouraging is for us to consider in all these. I've shared situations from traveling and from driving, from interacting with people, all these different scenarios where we see those opportunities. But it can be at work, it can be with your family, it can be with your friends, it can be when you're out socializing, it can be when you're volunteering, whatever. Always be looking for the situations where you can be the bigger, better person by being the billy goat who lays down. Not because you are submissive and subservient to everybody else around you, but because you're just that much better than the person who will refuse to lay down. At least that's my opinion. If you're willing to lay down so the other goat can walk across you are the better person. If the other one refuses to lay down, they got issues, and they don't need to be your issues. Let them walk on by. All right. With that, I'll stop my blabbering, and I'll see you all next time from my front porch.